But when I went out to DC, oh, did they make fun of me for my accent and talking about the bags and the wagons? And I just remember thinking, I don't have an accent. You all are the ones with the accent, right?
Hi, welcome to Jennifer Beckstrand's 10-Minute Book Club. I'm so glad you're here tonight. I hope you're having a wonderful summer. It's almost over, sadly, but I hope it was wonderful. Tonight, you are in for a real treat because I am interviewing Debbie Russell. She's written Crossing 51, which is a memoir slash biography, and I know you're going to really be interested in reading it after you hear our interview. Please remember to sign up for my newsletter. If you go to my website, jenniferbeckstrand.com, you can sign up there and you'll get a free book when you sign up. And remember, my first three ever Amish books, Kate's Song, Rebecca's Rose, and Miriam's Quilt, are up on Amazon. On ebook, they're really cheap. Also, you can get them in paperback and audiobook with it. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Debbie Russell. Debbie, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me, Jennifer.
I am so excited. Debbie and I have never met, but we connected through a publicist, and I'm so excited to hear about you and your book. It's not normally what I would feature on this book club, but I love hearing about new stuff. So this is just really exciting for me.
Well, I'm excited too, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be with you.
Well, so tell us a little bit about yourself. You sound like you're from the Northeast, just a teeny accent.
I love that because actually I'm from the Midwest.
Okay.
But I spent 4 very formative years in Washington, D.C. So when I moved out there, I finished college at George Washington University in Washington, D.C. But when I moved, I grew up in Wisconsin and I now live in Minnesota. But when I went out to DC, oh, did they make fun of me for my accent and talking about the bags and the wagons? And I just remember thinking, I don't have an accent. You all are the ones with the accent, right? So but I think those 4 years that I spent out there were rather formative because I was in my early 20s and I must have done something to kind of modify the Midwestern accent. So here we are.
Well, I hear the Wisconsin because I know
Wisconsin,
that, people who are from Wisconsin because they say Wisconsin.
as opposed to Wisconsin,
Yes.
right? Or Minnesota.
Soda.
Minnesota.
That's
Yeah.
so great. Well, so where do you live now? And tell us about your book, but tell me where you live now first.
Okay, first, I will just say that I live now in central Minnesota on 10 acres of what I believe is just beautiful property. It's a combination of prairie and wetland. I moved out here in 2018, which is a big part of my book, was making this dream come true, moving out of the city of Minneapolis, where I lived for 30 years. I moved to Minnesota to go to law school, and then I was a lawyer for 30 years. I worked in our county attorney's office, mostly as a violent crimes prosecutor, and took early retirement in 2020 to live out here and wrote my first book and working on my second one. So I'm kind of living the dream at the moment. Yeah.
Well, so tell us about this book. It sounds so very interesting.
Well, this book is based on a file folder of letters that I came across back in 2005 when I was sort of in the height of my career as a prosecutor. But I came across these letters and they were fascinating because they were between my paternal grandfather and his family, my father and my aunt and uncle. My grandfather was a doctor who became addicted to Demerol. And what he did is he voluntarily put himself into a federal locked drug rehabilitation center in Fort Worth, Texas. And this was in 1951. They were called narcotic farms. There were two of them, one in Fort Worth, Texas, the other was in Lexington, Kentucky. And they had this approach to drug addiction whereby they tried to give people things to do. They taught them skills in an effort to build up their self-esteem. And my grandfather, who had been a doctor and a surgeon, ultimately was able to assist with surgeries at this rehab center while he was undergoing rehabilitation. And he was there for 4 months and successfully completed the program. And as far as I know, never resorted to using narcotics again. But these letters were just a wonderful testament to family, because the family really rallied around him and they supported him. And he was very self-aware, and he did this at the age of 51, I should mention. And so my book is called Crossing 51, because when I was 51, I felt like at some point I needed to actually have some therapy for myself, because my dad was accepted into hospice and it was all becoming just way too much. And so it's kind of two stories. That's why I call it not quite a memoir, but it's my grandfather's story and my story of how we kind of got through the midlife portion of our lives, which, everybody goes through it at one point or another. So that's kind of the nutshell version. It's always hard to explain, but I like to say it's kind of the kitchen sink of midlife issues, the aging parents and trying to find your way in your career, all those things that hit us right at midlife.
Oh, wow. That sounds absolutely fascinating. How did you? I mean, I get a letter and I read it and I throw it away. And I know, back a few years back, they didn't do that, but how did you find all these letters?
Well, they were in a file folder that had a rubber band around them. And so I, for some reason, became the keeper of all the family archives. So when my parents moved out of our family home, these boxes came to me and I just put them in my basement. And one day I was looking for something and I just pulled out this folder and I took off the rubber band, and they were pristine. They were all in order. Some were handwritten, some were typed. And right on the top was my grandfather's ID badge from being in this blocked facility. And it's like his mugshot is staring. And I just sat there and I just started reading them, and they really moved me. I will say that they showed such a powerful love between my grandmother and my grandfather, and then the family, the rest of the family. And because I was so moved by them at the time, I thought they could be their own book. It could be a story of a middle-aged doctor who goes into drug rehab in 1951. And when I left my old job in 2020, this was the thing I wanted to do. I wanted to write a book, but at this point, so much had happened in my own life with respect to my dad and us talking about the letters and just getting to know him and the family, that I sort of wanted both stories in one story. That's why I say it's not quite a memoir, because it's my grandfather's story, my dad's story, and my story. And it's sort of about finding my identity through my paternal lineage, if that makes any sense. Because my dad was so much older than his younger brother and sister. He was in high school and then he was away at college when all of this kind of came to a head. So he was on the East Coast at Boston University, and he writes this just heartwarming first letter where he says to my grandfather, "Do not blame yourself. This was accidental," or I forget how he put it, but he said, "Just know that I love you with all my heart and soul. And if I need to come visit you, I will come visit." I mean, it was just this amazing response from a 23-year-old kid who's in college and should have his own life that he's got going on, right?
But
Right.
are you a reader and do you like to read romance?
So I am a voracious reader, and I don't I went through a romance period. I'm trying to remember how old I was. Probably in high school, I think.
Okay.
So I like romance kind of when it's in the undercurrent.
You're stuck on a desert island. What three things do you want to take with you?
Well, I have two dogs, so that's going to be two of the three.
Okay.
And it's funny. Do I take the iPad along? Is there Wi-Fi on the desert island? Those are questions. I have questions. I need specifics before I can decide. I'm a terrible overthinker. So that trying to think about that last thing, because would I take a good book? Would I pack a picnic basket? I don't know. That's
So are you an overpacker? Do you overpack when you go on a trip?
No. In fact, I try to limit myself to one bag, but I do the whole mental gymnastics overthinking of what is going to go in that bag and what do I leave. So,
Oh,
yeah.
that is my husband, and I'm terrible because I'm probably an overpacker, but it takes me about 10 minutes to pack for wherever we're going. He travels for business. And so, in the evening before a trip, he'll say, "Well, I can't do anything tonight because I got to go pack." And it's like it takes him 2 hours to pack. It's like,
Right.
I
Well,
did want to ask you before we go, since you were an attorney working in like criminal cases, do you like reading like, suspense, mysteries, things like that? Not at all.
I would say mysteries, yes. True crime, no. It's one of those things where I think you don't necessarily want to read about your work.
The other day, I can't even remember what I was reading. I mostly the book I read is what the book club is reading. That's what I
Sure.
have time for.
Yeah, yeah.
I sat down for a couple of hours to read a book, and it felt like such a indulgence, And I guess it is, but in some ways, I just think, oh, this is just, I love this. Reading
I've
and
heard
writing, that's what I want to spend my day doing.
I have heard people say that, and I really believe that reading books is such a way of caring for yourself because you are able to just get into that other world. And again, if the book is well written, so I highly, highly support reading books whenever and however you're able to.
And a well-written book, there's not much more pleasurable than reading a well-written book. I love reading a well-written book.
100%. I agree completely.
Well, Debbie, thank you so much. This has been just a pleasure, and I've loved hearing about this book. Readers, go check out Crossing 51. It sounds amazing. Thanks for being here.
And thank you so much for having me, Jennifer.